Alright, so as I alluded to in a previous video, there's a lot of people who would like to see James Degale take on Chris Eubank Jr. And the reason is they don't see James Degale as particularly formidable at this point in his career. They see him as a very vulnerable champion and a very beatable champion who only scraped through by the skin of his teeth against Caleb Truax in the rematch. Now, let me give you my perspective on it. James Degale versus Chris Eubank Jr. at this point in time. If Chris Eubank Jr. turned up to fight James Degale the same way he did against George Groves or Billy Joe Saunders, James Degale not only beats Chris Eubank Jr., he beats him handily. Most likely on points, but a wide points victory. And what do I mean if Eubank Jr. turns up the way he did in those fights? Well, because Chris Eubank Jr.'s problems extend to far more than just technical deficiencies. Chris Eubank Jr. has some mental blockages. This is a guy who, for my money, has choked twice on the big stage. Yeah, he choked. He bottled it on the big stage against Billy Joe Saunders early in that fight and against George Groves. People talk about Chris Eubank Jr.'s technique or lack thereof, the fact that he doesn't have a proper trainer and all this kind of business. But go and look at Chris Eubank Jr. when he fought Avni Yildirim. Go look at him when he fought Arthur Abraham. Go look at any number of Chris Eubank Jr. fights. Go look at him when he fought Reynold Quinlan. In all of those fights, Chris Eubank Jr. was throwing short, for the most part, well-delivered punches. And even when he did throw wide shots from time to time, they weren't that wide. But against Billy Joe Saunders, even in the late rounds of the fight, where he was coming on strong, and against George Groves, Eubank Jr. was swinging for the hills. I mean, he was swinging like he was having his first ever amateur fight. His technique had gone completely out of the window, and I cannot just put that down to the movement of Billy Joe Saunders and the movement of George Groves. No, it's not down to that at all. Because there are plenty of guys who were not particularly skilled at cutting off the ring, who fought Billy Joe Saunders and who fought George Groves, but they weren't swinging for the fences the way Eubank Jr. was, with these wild, ridiculous swings, throwing themselves off balance, you know, fighting like somebody outside a kebab shop on a Saturday night at 3 a.m. That's not how many unskilled fighters fought Billy Joe and fought George Groves. No. They continued to keep their form and shape together while they attacked George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders. But with Chris Eubank Jr., his form and shape went completely out of the window. He underperformed in both of those fights. No question about it. Now, even if he'd performed to the best of his ability, it don't mean he would have won. Don't get it twisted. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is that his form and his shape went out the window in both fights because mentally he was not all there. Mentally he bottled it. And that's why his technique turned to you know what. And so if he turned up like that against James Degale, mentally bottling it again, it's going to be an easy night for James Degale. You guys look at the Truax fight and think, oh, well, Eubank Jr. is more formidable at attacking than Truax. Well, not when he bottles it, he ain't. When have you ever seen Truax swinging for the fences with wild, ridiculous punches? I'm telling you now, if Truax fights Billy Joe or Truax fights George Groves, he ain't going to be swinging no wild shots like Eubank Jr. was swinging against those guys. He ain't going to be swinging no wild shots at all. He's going to be throwing the short, compact little punches, same as he was against Degale. And that's what gave Degale problems, was the short, well-delivered shots from Truax. Yeah? If Eubank Jr. comes in swinging with all kind of silly shots like he did against Groves, James DeGale's going to have an easy night, people. That fight's not even going to be difficult for him at all. So it depends on how Eubank Jr. holds it together mentally as to whether he's got a chance against James DeGale if that fight takes place. If he can hold it together mentally and keep his technique together, then yes, I think it's a competitive fight and it could potentially be a very difficult fight for James DeGale. But if he can't hold it together and it's the same situation as it was against Groves and Billy Joe, then Eubank Jr. ain't winning the fight at all. He's going to get completely outboxed. So those are my thoughts on that. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. It's Hatman, I'm out.